Hi, everybody. Tonight, we're going to be unraveling the psychological mechanism behind why we turn to food as a coping mechanism for stress and anxiety. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Stress and anxiety and depression are increasingly prevalent in today's fast paced, busy world, and it affects millions and millions of people worldwide. And I find it incredibly interesting that many people, myself included, turn to food during times of emotional distress. That's a phenomenon that we call emotional eating. Now, in this class tonight, we're going to delve into the intricate relationship between stress, anxiety, and emotional eating. We will explore the underlying mechanisms in the brain that drive our emotional eating, and I hope that we can shed some light on why certain people suffering from stress and anxiety disorders often turn to food for comfort. It's a common thing, really, and it's just because food is so available. It's just right there. So, that having been said, I think a great place for us to start tonight is the brain's response to stress and anxiety, because that's really going to give us a lot of information. So, to comprehend why people with stress and anxiety become emotional eaters, we first must understand the brain's response to those emotional states. Now, what does that mean? Well, when we're faced with stressors or anxiety-provoking situations, the brain activates something called the we'll just call it the HPA axis because there's no way I'm going to pronounce that word. It's right here. Leading to the release of stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. Now, these hormones trigger various physiological changes, preparing our bodies for fight or flight. Bet you didn't know that. But did you know that there was a reward mechanism at work here? It's kind of surprising, but it's true. So let's talk about the role of the reward system in our brain. It's responsible for a lot of our bad behavior. You see, during stress and anxiety, the brain's reward system, which involves the release of dopamine, becomes highly active. Now, dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and it's associated with things like pleasure and reward and creating an overall sense of well-being within us. Now, this reward system plays a very crucial role in regulating our emotions, our motivation, and influencing behaviors, including eating. So a lot of people are surprised to learn that emotional eating is really just another coping mechanism. It's this illusion that if we eat this, it's going to fill this void in us, but it's not true. So in times of stress and anxiety, the brain seeks relief and comfort at all costs. It'll look anywhere to find it. And the consumption of certain foods, particularly those that are high in sugar and fat, can activate the brain's reward system and provide temporary feelings of pleasure and even comfort. Temporary is the key word. So emotional eating, therefore, acts as a coping mechanism, serving to distract us from our negative emotions and provide a momentary sense of relief. But you might be asking yourself, but how does all of this really work? Well, here's how. There are several psychological mechanisms that contribute to emotional eating among people dealing with stress and anxiety and depression. And I'm going to cover all of them, or most of them, but they're a little complicated, so stay with me. So neurotransmitters, which act as the reward system, are really the culprit. As we talked about earlier, stress and anxiety activate the brain's reward system, which involves the release of neurotransmitters like dopamine. So it's that dopamine hit. It's like a slot machine in Las Vegas. Every time you pull the handle, you get that dopamine hit. That's why you do it again. So in response to stress, the brain seeks activities or substances that can stimulate the reward system and provide that temporary escape from the negative emotions that you're feeling. So food, particularly sugary, fatty foods and other high caloric options, can trigger the release of dopamine and induce pleasurable sensations. And that's important. So, when faced with stress or anxiety, the brain releases stress hormones, including cortisol and adrenaline, into our bloodstreams. Cortisol, in particular, plays a really significant role in regulating our emotions and our stress response, or I should say, our response to stress. Because elevated cortisol levels can affect food cravings and appetite, leading to a desire for those foods that are high in sugar and fat. It's the cortisol that makes you hungry when you feel like you're stressed. Remember that the next time you feel it. So, by consuming these fatty foods, they help to regulate our stress hormone levels and temporarily alleviate our emotional distress. Another big part of all of this is your brain's fight for emotional regulation. And what I mean by that is this: food can serve as a form of emotional regulation or self-soothing. We do it to make ourselves feel better. So, in times of stress and anxiety, people may turn to food as a means to distract themselves from the negative emotions that they're feeling and provide comfort and help to regulate their emotional state. But here's the part that no one ever tells you. It's truly one of the nasty little secrets about emotional eating. Are you ready? The act of eating and the taste of certain foods can activate sensory pleasure pathways, providing a momentary relief from emotional distress. And what that means is this: when we eat, it's not about filling our stomachs. It can have a very powerful effect on our emotions as well. But did you know that the act of eating and the flavors of certain foods can trigger a response in our brains, activating what we call pleasure pathways? Now, these pathways are responsible for producing feelings of pleasure and reward, and they're actually located on your tongue. Your taste buds are what trigger them. And I'll give you a great example of this. Ice cream companies. Ice cream companies study this on a scientific level. They spend billions studying this. They want to create flavors that trigger those pleasure pathways in your brain to give you that dopamine hit so you will want and buy more and more ice cream. So you see how this works? We are all being manipulated by food companies and we don't even know it. But it's true. I hate it, but it's true. Now, I want to talk about one of the 7 sneaky ways that anxiety is literally stealing your joy. And that is the psychological associations and conditionings that come with this behavior. What I mean by that is that emotional eating can be influenced by psychological associations and conditioning over time. It's not something that happens quickly. You develop this over time. So certain foods may be linked to positive memories, comfort, or even nostalgia. Interesting, isn't it? Now, these associations can be deeply ingrained in our brains, leading us to seek those specific foods during times of stress and anxiety. Makes sense, doesn't it? And the anticipation of pleasure and the familiarity associated with certain foods can offer psychological comfort and contribute to emotional eating behaviors. Are you beginning to see how all of this works? It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Emotional eating can become a habit and a coping mechanism for managing stress and anxiety. And a lot of people just don't see it that way. They don't understand. That's why I do these training videos. In fact, I would venture to say that emotional eating is the most popular stress relieving technique out there. It's the number one thing that people go to. The problem is, it's all temporary. And the temporary relief provided by food creates a reward pathway in the brain, reinforcing the behavior. So guess what? You do it again and again and again, every time getting that dopamine hit. So over time, people might develop a conditioned response, automatically turning to food as a means of coping with emotional distress, even if it doesn't provide that long-term solution that they're hoping for. So it's important to note that while emotional eating may offer temporary relief, it does not address the underlying causes of stress and anxiety. And that is what we do in the Metacognition Codex program. We help you to reframe the negative, stressed out mindset by first addressing the root cause of your emotional issues so that you don't use food or anything else as a coping tool. Now, once you've successfully dealt with your core issues, only then can the healing process truly begin. And we will guide you through that process every single step of the way. So if you're an emotional eater and your weight is out of control, reach out to us. We'll give you more information on how we can help you create real lasting change in your life. I promise you'll be glad you did. You know, there are people watching this right now who are eating food that you truly don't need. Now, you know who you are. But what you might not realize is that extensive emotional eating can lead to negative consequences such as weight gain, guilt, worsening of emotional well-being. It can affect your, not just your mental and emotional well-being, but it can affect you physically, and it happens quickly. So developing healthier coping strategies and seeking professional help when needed can provide you with more effective tools to manage your stress and anxiety and emotional eating. And speaking of emotional tools for managing your stress and anxiety, I am so excited to announce the release of my new ebook called The Silent Saboteur, 7 Sneaky Ways Anxiety is Stealing Your Joy. Here's the cover. I love it. Inside, we'll be uncovering the hidden tactics that anxiety is robbing you. And within the concise 50 pages, you're going to find so much valuable information, practical techniques for effectively managing your stress and anxiety. My hope is to empower you with the knowledge that you need to reclaim control over your mind and embrace your life filled with joy. So if you would like a free copy, simply raise your hand in the comments below and I'll make sure that you get it. I don't want to give away too much just yet, but one of the 7 sneaky ways that anxiety is literally robbing you of your joy in life is through emotional eating. I discuss that and so much more in this very informative book that I know will truly help you a lot. I promise. So if you want a free copy, let me know in the comments. All you have to do is raise your hand down below and we'll make sure that you get it. Hey folks, that's it for this week, my friends. I'm so grateful that you join me every week. Our group is growing, as you can see. Remember to take care of yourself and each other. And I'll see you next week with another training video full of helpful information to improve your life. Take care. I'm Stephen Diamond. Good night.